Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
perfect. Well, in that case, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this Pinellas CoC Emergency Management Hurricane Season Kickoff meeting. We don't say kickoff like we're really excited about the season ahead, but it is really important that we have this opportunity to get together and to really talk about coordinating and planning for the I say upcoming hurricane season, but actually hurricane season started yesterday. So for this hurricane season. So thank you to all of us who are joining us, or to everybody who's joining us once again for this hurricane preparation meeting. If this is your first time joining us for one of these, thank you for being here. My name is Victoria Kelly. I am with the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas. Around hurricane season time, cold night shelter season time, you'll see my email address in your inbox a lot, along with my colleague Megan Robinson, who is on this call, and you probably saw the email invitation from her. So make sure you save our email addresses. We'll pop up a lot when the weather gets a little bit crazy. And we have a lot of great information today. Pinellas County is going to share some information about the season as we are looking at it, some good preparation information. And then we are also going to talk about some COC communication and outreach planning as well. So that's really all I have for you right now. Dominique?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and just continue with the introductions. So, from Pinellas County, there's three of us presenting this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Dominique Randall. As many of you know, I work with Pinellas County Human Services as the homeless section manager. So, really liaisoning with a lot of you during this hurricane season and across the year. But for the sake of today's meeting, just that coordination, if needing to activate, and I'll hand it over to Jessica.
Yep, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Geib. I'm with Pinellas County Human Services as our department emergency manager. So you will hopefully not hear from me much this season, but if we do see like we may be facing potential tropical weather, I will be coordinating with Dominique for updates and information directly to all of you all. And then Nick.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Morrow. As of today, I am the Health and Human Services Program Lead. Previously, I was the Health and Medical Coordinator, so I was focused more on the special needs and healthcare facility side. But my supervisor, who you may all have known in the past, Adam, has been promoted, so I am stepping into this new role. So I will be with Jessica in the EOC, leading the Human Services branch, and I will be coordinating with you all as well.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to dive first in. We've always talk about, you'll see a lot of familiar themes as we go through our training today and just our discussion. We'll have plenty of times for questions and opportunities for you all to speak into that. But we're going to start off with just kind of that repetition leads to retention. So we're going to start with how we support our homeless providers and shelters through disaster. And then we're going to get into some of our sheltering types, things to consider and prepare for, as well as some of our community coordination and involvement. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and transition just kind of as a summary. Pinellas County Emergency Management coordinates with over 24 municipalities, including 18 fire districts, 12 law enforcement agencies, and in the past 10 years has activated 16 times. Many of you have been part of those activations in some way, shape, or form. So we just, again, thank you for your partnerships in that. For 2025, these storms, next slide, please, have not been used since 2019. There was one replacement. They always replace them when there's a kind of a larger event or bigger impact. So there's the name of storms for this coming year. The Pacific Coast actually has a separate list that they use entirely. That also changed a few years ago. So these are our storms for 2025. And many of you are familiar being in Pinellas County, but for those who may be new, there's a lot of coastline, over 400 bridges. We are the most densely populated county times two. So while we are small, we are mighty, and there are over 40 COC providers. So a lot of resources and a lot of moving pieces to work together with just under 1 million people. That also is 76, almost 70% of us are in an evac zone, going all the way up from mandatory A all the way up to E. So a lot of considerations on how we do some of those activations and how we do some of that coordinated for evacuation. This is also a familiar image. Next, thank you, is there are 6 emergency shelters in Pinellas County, from Clearwater to South St. Pete. You see those little spots in black indicating where the primary emergency shelters are, as well as 2 domestic violence shelters. And 4 of those are in AB evacs. So again, my main role is coordinating with those 4 partners, identifying an evacuation shelter when they are called and how to do that. That also includes last year, there were 721 identified unhoused individuals, unsheltered individuals that needed shelter based off the 2024 point in time. So 250 individuals plus that are also unsheltered needing to seek shelter. Many of our hotels are also in those AB evacs. So once those evacuations are called, those hotels are supposed to shut down and a lot of people are going to be seeking shelter. Why do I say this? Because that means minimum, we're looking at up to 1,500 people seeking shelter that are unhoused or precariously housed immediately when an evacuation order is called. Some of your shelters are in no evac zones, and so we try to support those as well with another up to 300 or so that are in shelters and remaining in place through the evacuation. Homelessness is a vulnerability in and of itself. So being unhoused, disaster does not discriminate. We all saw that this past year. Regardless of housing and housing status, disaster can have a major impact. But it is worth mentioning that individuals with disabilities are 2 to 4 times more likely to be injured or die during a disaster. Also, access to technology and communication can vary significantly, as well as perception of risk and planning can look very different. We saw that a lot with Hurricane Debbie and with Hurricane Helene, where people were unwilling or unhoused, were unwilling to evacuate out of their unhoused kind of those encampments. But when based off the storm impact, they really realized and kind of pivoted their needs and their interests based off of response and into Hurricane Milton. So evacuation is always kind of what we're stressing, especially for those who are unsheltered. But we understand you all are going in there and having those conversations, and people are still choosing to remain in place. So our coordination with you all over the past few years, we really kind of started to pivot into what we're doing formally now. Since 2022, we continue to have our kickoff meeting, some sort of 101 basic information. We've created a resource card, which I'll share the image of that and how to request more of those later. And also offering coordinated TA calls with shelter providers. We've done some site visits. We try to kind of vary those from year to year so we're not overwhelming people. But I do want to mention if there's any providers on here who we were unable to meet with this year who are interested, or maybe you had some follow-up questions, we are available. You can reach out to us in the chat or send us an email, phone call. We're available to help you with those situations. And I would ask, of course, the earlier we prepare, the better. Time is something that we cannot have an infinite supply of sometimes. And so being able to reach out will really help us get ahead of the game. Some things we learned over the years while meeting with you all is that some of you have great plans. Some of you have other accreditations. Some of you have been through the storms. We've all been through storms this past year. And some of us still need a little bit more assistance. So again, we're offering that TA and that assistance. There was recently some trainings offered to try and coordinate that further. Plans need to be revisited. I don't think after 2024, I think we learned a lot of lessons learned this past year. So how do we continue to kind of grow in that and how to be more prepared as we move forward? And few had little to no plan. So again, just because we're not hearing from you, we're trying to reach out, we're trying to communicate to make sure you all have plans. But please reach out to us if you need any assistance with kind of shoring up or have some questions that we can try and help. Plans do change and pivot, so having an alternative site and multiple alternative sites is really key to kind of this planning and strategy, having a plan A, B, C, D for backup. So some of our pre-season prep, emergency management and COC providers, we met with all of you guys, like I said, kind of pre-season, or many of you. We work on offering TA, participating in resource fairs. There was actually a very large one this past weekend, but there's multiples throughout the next coming weeks of resource fairs and ongoing hurricane preparedness for different populations and locations. We are working on creating and editing, or excuse me, actually distributing our resource card and hurricane guide and getting that information to you guys. And then here we are at the Hurricanes Kickoff meeting. So what does our timeline look like? This will follow similar to years prior. We're looking at kind of that 5 to 7 days out. I believe it was last year. The National Hurricane Center started pivoting how early they're communicating risk. And so depending on the size of the storm and the magnitude, we're really identifying, communicating that to you as quickly as we can, getting that information out as early as 5 days out to really start to get an understanding, get an idea of how many people are in your shelter, how many people are needing those resources, how you're going to pivot your calendar, your resources, and how what that will look like moving forward. We'll initiate our virtual meeting. Typically, Jessica and I are part of that. Nick, I imagine, will be as well, and then start to schedule up a cadence of meetings. So again, depending on the size of the storm, we could wait another day or two to see how the storm progresses, or we may, at that time, initiate the daily call. Providers are going to shift from residents to kind of those day-to-day operations to that information. So we're asking you guys to partner with us on that communication of risk. We're going to get into some of that, what do those risk factors look like, how to best communicate, how to stay informed, but really to help support us as emergency management, as Pinellas County, as residents of Pinellas County, how can we support and make sure everyone understands that what's available to them, what's coming, and how to stay protected and safe. I'll work on gathering those pre-census data for your shelter locations as we move closer to that. So then we're looking at about 2 days out, again, focusing on communicating risk. We talked a lot about this in years past, but it's really not about the cone. It's about what's on the outside, what's on the fringe that may be coming. We were not directly hit with any of the 3 storms last year and obviously had significant impacts in our area. We'll start doing those reoccurring daily calls. We'll continue to confirm census and evacuation needs of shelters, whether that be A, B, or higher, and pivoting locations that you may need to be going to if you're a shelter that needs to evacuate. And we'll continue to maintain the daily communication in partnership with the COC. Like I said, time is one resource we cannot get more of. So planning early, getting ahead of it, staying ahead of it really is key to the kind of the success of safety and planning with evacuation. Public transportation and shelter will look the same as it has in the past. Pre-storm, PSTA will activate free transportation, especially once that evacuation order is called. However, that transportation will cease when the winds reach above 40 miles per hour. So it is, again, early evacuation is key, time you will not be able to get back. And depending on how the routes are looking and the damage assessments, it may take a while to get those buses back operational. Post-storm, we are continuing to look at alternative routes. So last year we had kind of secured a plan to where post-storm, the full routes might not be open with PSTA, but we might be able to get people back to a central hub. We're still moving forward with that sort of plan in place. I will also mention that for pets, they are absolutely allowed on the bus. It is encouraged to use crates and leashes and muzzles when possible, but they're ultimately when no animal should be left behind. So when it really comes down to it, they're going to be able to access a bus. They're going to be able to get evacuation. But again, the earlier the better. Rideshare, while not guaranteed, typically is offered post-storm by the actual vendor, Uber, Lyft, offering those codes and those resources, but it's only as good as the people who have access to those apps and the resources to log in and request those rides. So again, things to plan for and kind of think through. If you are at a shelter needing evacuation, we're going to continue to coordinate that like as we have in the past. Ongoing communication, and I know the HLA will really dive into this more, how they're communicating through the COC. through the duration of the event, but we will continue to do our daily emails. This past season did get a little hectic, and so we take responsibility for some of those emails coming out a little later and not in the regular cadence that we would have wished. So that is something that we are working to improve to really get you guys the most important information, the best resource at the most appropriate time, and not really paying into the fanfare or kind of the fear that might be coming and passing around the community, really sticking to the nuts and bolts of what's most appropriate to communicate out. Post landfall, we will continue with our daily emails. Depending on the severity of the storm, those post landfall emails may last 1 to 3 calls. And we'll all continue immediately discussing with the shelters plans to reopen. So every year when we move into those schools, the first thing the school will ask is, when are you closing? Because it is paramount to recovery and long-term sustainability to get those students back in school and to get that schedule reinitiated. So as soon as that storm has passed, you expect communication from me to try and get an idea of when we can get the homeless shelters reopened so we can get those residents transitioned back. I'll help coordinate transportation like we have in the past, and I will, of course, ask if there's additional capacity. So you all have been helpful, very helpful for us to ensure additional placements into some of your shelters post-storm, including domestic violence situations that had happened in storms, during the storms, and then accepting additional placement, those who may have been in encampments or those who may have been in their vehicles and unsheltered, transitioning into shelters. So we thank you for that. Providers, we encourage those who are case managers and those that do not provide housing assistance to do a full, call down of their entire caseload for outreach to engage in their hotspots, to ensure that their, kind of usual suspects, their usual clientele are all identified and safe and back in their kind of their situations and have the resources they need. We'll schedule an after action and kind of a lessons learned meeting. And then hopefully, ideally, we're not going to have any storms this season. I should have prefaced that, right? But again, repetition leads to retention. So we just want to make sure we're covering all of those things. On the next slide, I have kind of just a real quick visual of our hurricane guide. The 2025 hurricane guide is out and printed. Few of your locations may have them. We will continue to use the blue resource cards that we have used from years past. I've seen those cards at many of your sites, even in recent weeks. So if you are needing any of those resources, please scan the QR code. I will also put the link in the chat for you to go ahead and request those so that I can drop off hurricane guides as well as additional blue resource cards in the coming weeks. As many of you know, I also end up pivoting to shelter. So when the storm's coming, I'm not going to be able to drive all around town delivering resource guides and blue cards. So that link is in the chat, or you can scan the QR code to request those formally. Also, just feel free to reach out to me and we can connect. But we ask that you really push out the blue resource cards in the days leading up to the storm, as you again are communicating risk to the residents of Pinellas County. So with that being said, I'm going to transition over to Nick. He's going to talk through some of our activation and shelter coordination that happens across the county.
Thanks, Dominique. So from the emergency management side, kind of how we work through our activation timeline. So, throughout all of hurricane season, emergency management is paying attention, constantly monitoring the tropics for anything that might be forming. We're looking at the models, we're talking to the National Weather Service, but we are also looking at the National Hurricane Center's tropical weather outlook, which you can see here on the right hand side of the screen. So I recommend all of you, if you're not already taking advantage of this, at nhc.noaa.gov. During hurricane season, every 6 hours, the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center are providing an update to this. So there's nothing out there cooking right now, but it's important during hurricane season just to be on the lookout and use this as a guide. So, that's kind of this, 7-day outlook. We might be seeing something, we're monitoring, but once we get to that 5-day level, we're going to begin holding meetings with our partner agencies if we're in that 5-day cone, especially if time could be lost due to weekends. So if it's a Friday, we're going to try to hold that Friday meeting because we don't want, it to wait through the week and us get stuck on Monday trying to rush through things. At that 5-day mark, we're also going to be developing what we call our BMW, which stands for best, mid, and worst case scenarios. And basically what that means is we're looking at all of the factors and we put it together. So best case, based on what we know right now, this is the best that we're going to get. So, maybe it's a little smaller impact where we may or may not open shelters. We may call for this level of evacuation. Mid is going to be that middle case. And that's all based on, X amount of shelters that we're going to be opening, potential zones that we're going to call for evacuation, of course, worst case. So we're looking at 3 different options and we're planning for that because, of course, we always want to be planning for the worst case so that if it does happen, we're not surprised by that. So we're looking at all of the options that we might face. Next slide. So once our internal emergency management teams forms that BMW on that 4 days out, we're going to be presenting this to the EPG. So they're going to be reviewing our work and what the potential could be. And that EPG stands for the Executive Policy Group, and that is made up of the county attorney, the sheriff, the county administrator, the emergency management director. So all of those high-level decision makers are the ones who are actually going to make that final decision on when that evacuation is going to order out, when shelters are going to open and close. So we do our best to provide them with the most accurate and timely information as possible, but that EPG is going to be the group that actually makes the call for that decision. 3 to 4 days out, we're going to be calling our departments off of their day-to-day work to begin storm preparations. Human Services has full participation in staff shelters, so we're going to be putting those teams together for a potential shelter activation. I'm going to be calling folks into the EOC to help with healthcare call downs, and supplies are going to start being put together and staged to go to shelters. And this timeline may change. So, 3 to 4 days out, we're looking at, when's the optimal time based on the risk that we have. So if it's going to be a stronger storm, we're going to need more time to provide for people to evacuate. We're going to open up shelters a little bit early. So it kind of depends on a lot of different factors. But we're going to be working with Pinellas County, internally, Pinellas County School Board, EMS, Department of Health, and law enforcement to come together to kind of make sure that we are all ready to go when the time comes to open shelters. And this is also when Dominique's going to be reaching out and touching base and likely collecting information on how many folks you might need to go to different shelter types depending upon their medical needs. Next slide. So 2 to 3 days out, that's when we're going to see the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service issue the hurricane watches and warnings and storm surge watches and warnings. We're going to see those watches turn to warnings 36 hours before impacts. We're going to be pushing heavily through communications, making sure that the public is doing the most to be ready for the incoming storms. So going out and having those supplies ready, letting them know that shelters are going to be opening. And fill up your gas tank, all those sorts of things that we are at risk. So we're going to be getting those sort of messaging. Next slide. So, less than 2 days out, that's going to be whenever you're going to see the evacuation orders issued by the Board of County Commissioners or the county administrator. We're going to be beginning those special needs transports to shelters. That's typically, it depends on the strength of the storm. So sometimes that takes 2 days, sometimes it takes 1 day, depending on the level of evacuation. That's when we're going to be announcing that the shelters are open to the public. So shelters will be open by those announced times. We're going to be putting that out through the news and through Alert Pinellas to folks so they know where to go, when to go. And that is going to remain open until it's declared, like I said earlier, by the EPG. So they're the ones who are going to be the ones that determine to close the shelters. And again, like Dominique said, they're going to try to close those as soon as it's feasible so we can get schools back open and beginning that step towards recovery. So, what is risk sheltering? Why do we, plan for sheltering here in the county? So we have to plan for up to 40,000 residents, um, per night in a full scale evacuation. So if we had a full scale, everyone had to evacuate, level E evacuation, we have to make sure that we've got 40,000 spaces in our shelters throughout Pinellas County. And we don't have permanent shelter space. Some counties have, a big warehouse, big building that they built specifically for sheltering. But in Pinellas County, we use school educational classrooms, which are outfitted to make sure that they can sustain 8 hours of 160-mile-per-hour winds. And those classroom spaces can be have desks in them up to an hour before evacuation. So we have to make sure we get all of that stuff cleared out of the way. Ultimately, our goal for risk sheltering is to make sure that folks in Pinellas County have a safe place to ride out the storm, provide that very, basic 3 meals each day that they're in the shelter, and then they're responsible for bringing everything else to make them comfortable. So, really, our goal is just to allow them to be safe for that sheltering period, and then once the shelter closes, move on to that next stage. Um, risk sheltering is best compared to a life raft, not a cruise ship. So, some people come to the shelter expecting it to be, super nice, and ultimately, it's really just that safe place. So it's a respite from that immediate storm. It's not a solution for housing, but or an opportunity to connect folks to programs. So, there may be some unhoused folks to come into the shelters. If it is at all possible to connect them to the resources, we will. But ultimately, folks, their pre-storm condition is going to be the same post-storm. Once we close that shelter, we're not going to be changing the outcome of folks' housing situations through our sheltering operation. Next slide. So we've got 3 types of shelters in Pinellas County. We've got our general population shelters that's open to everybody. There's no generator, so power may go out. And really, this is that most basic sheltering. So we give you 20 square feet. We give you a spot on the ground, and we provide you 3 meals. And you are responsible for bringing everything else to make yourself comfortable. Most importantly, an air mattress, cot, something to sleep on. So folks, unfortunately, sometimes they don't plan and they're going to the shelter, they're underwear, and they come with nothing to sleep on. So that's a big one there is folks need to know that for general population sheltering, if at all possible, I know some unhoused folks may not have these resources, but bringing something to sleep on is important. And I know that some homeless providers do provide mats. I believe Pinellas Hope provides something for their folks to sleep on. So think about that if that's at all possible for your organization. Of course, bringing clothing for a few days, toiletries, those sort of items. So again, you're getting a spot on the floor, safe place to shelter. We'll provide you meals, but it's very basic. Then we've got our pet-friendly shelters, which is basically the same thing as a general population shelter, except you are allowed to bring your pets with you. It is important, like Dominic was saying, if you do have a crate for your pet, to bring those sort of things, but no pets are going to be turned away if they don't come to the shelter with all of the pet supplies. But ultimately, it's a general population shelter, except you're allowed to bring your pet. Your pet is stored in one side of the building where all the other folks, all the sheltering folks are in a different area. So your pet can't be right next to you. They'll be in a caged area on the other side of the shelter. And it's important that the owners are responsible for taking care of their pets. So they're supposed to go visit their pets, take them out to go to the bathroom and check in on them. It is their responsibility to take care of their pets while they're in that pet-friendly shelter. Now we've got our third option here is a special needs shelter. And folks who go to the special needs shelters, they must qualify. So this is for folks who are dependent on oxygen or electricity for medical equipment, or folks who just need a higher level of medical supervision because they have basic medical care that they have to deal with each day. There are cots that are available for folks who qualify for the special needs shelters. Pets are not permitted, but Animal Services is stationed at the special needs shelters and will care for folks' animals. So while they're sheltering in a special needs shelter, they do have care for their pets through the Animal Services throughout the county. What to bring? It's going to be the same stuff that you're going to want to bring that you would to a general population shelter. But on top of that, of course, you're going to want to bring all of the medical items that you might need, any mobility devices, oxygen supplies, those sorts of things. And then again, there is a cot to sleep on, but if someone has, bedding or something to bring that can make it more comfortable, that is a great thing to bring. Next slide. So, yep. Same type of stuff. So these are special needs shelters. Some of the conditions that will qualify somebody, again, is that oxygen, life-sustaining medical devices, really advanced issues with mobility. So not needing just a little bit of help, but needing constant help, and not having somebody to assist them would qualify somebody. Requiring assistance with routine care or medications, dependence on dialysis, cognitive conditions, diagnosed with a cognitive condition, blind without a personal aid or assistant, and combined with other medical needs. So those are some of the things that will qualify somebody. Something that I've been working with Dominique on is a guide for homeless providers so that whenever we're reaching out to you, next slide, so that whenever we're reaching out to you to kind of get an idea of the number of folks that you need to send to each shelter type. I believe in the past we kind of gave you some guidance, but it wasn't specifically clear on this. So we've created this triage guide here. So as you can see here on the top left, refer to a general population or pet-friendly shelter if the person is medically stable or manages their own medication, does not require electricity. And then on the right-hand side, refer to a special needs shelter if the resident requires significant mobility assistance, requires electricity, requires supplemental oxygen. So just making it a little bit more clear. So you're not kind of on your own to kind of cut through that medical guidance. So please use this as a guide whenever we're reaching out to determine total number of residents, how many folks are wheelchair dependent, and the number of pets and service animals. So I believe Dominique's going to be printing this, potentially laminating it, and giving this out to you all as a reference. So for the special needs registry, it's important to note that for permanent housing providers, you can pre-register for the special needs program, but registering for the special needs program is only required if transportation is needed. So this is really for the homeless providers that have apartments. So if your folks are living in apartments and they kind of have that standard address, they can register by going and completing our form. And then again, for the emergency shelter ones, folks who, don't have that permanent address, you'll be working with Dominique to confirm the census of your various populations so that when we go to send you that bus, we can account for those folks and where they're going to be going. So pet-friendly shelters, please don't stay behind due to your pets, and definitely don't abandon your pets. In Pinellas County, we want to make sure everyone knows that we will work with you to make sure that you can bring your pets, whether it's going to a special needs shelter or pet-friendly shelter. The pet-friendly shelters are intended for cats and dogs, but if someone brings something interesting that is not a cat or a dog, we can work with them. Animal Services has relationships with animals, organizations in the county. So if someone does bring, a jungle cat or a turtle or a lizard or those sorts of things, we can try our best to make sure that they're accommodated. So we just want to make sure no one should ever worry about not being able to bring their pets. We want to make sure that people could feel comfortable, that we'll make sure that you and your pets are planned for. Make sure that we encourage you to take a photo with them, so that you are able to, use that whenever you're showing shelter workers. Keeping important documents with you regarding your pets and in your phone. Again, like I said earlier, pets are not in the room with residents at pet-friendly shelters. They are separated. So folks who bring pets to the shelter are expected to check in with their animals and walk and feed them and maintain their care. Ideally, bring food, pet carrier, leash, all those sorts of things. But again, if someone doesn't have all of those things, that is not a reason not to go to a special needs shelter. And then just a note on service animals is that service animals can access any shelter. However, emotional support animals are considered pets. So that's important to note there. So only service animals emotional support animals can only go to the pet-friendly shelter locations. They're not going to be allowed inside of the special needs shelters, whereas service animals can. And also service animals are going to be right next to their owner at all times. So if someone goes to a pet-friendly shelter with their service animal, they will be allowed to be next to their owner, whereas pets must go to the other side of the building. And just for you all to know, we are going by the ADA's definition of a service animal, which legally in Florida is a dog and a miniature horse. And what shelter workers can ask somebody about their service animal is one, is this a service animal? And two, what services does this animal provide for you? So those are the only questions we're going to ask. We're not going to ask to see a certificate or any of those sorts of things. So just some notes on the legality of having a service animal in shelters. So this last slide here is just a guide on supplies. You know, I understand with your populations, they may not have all of these things, but on the right-hand side here, you see some of the items that you're going to want to consider bringing to a general population shelter. That's in addition to those things there in the general section side on the left-hand side. So, of course, if you're going to a gen pop shelter again, if you could bring something to sleep on, it's important to do that. Change of clothes, those sorts of things. And if your populations aren't going to be able to bring these things, I think it's kind of important for you to know what we're asking other folks, the general population, what we're expecting them to bring. So if there is any way you can help accommodate your folks with some of these items to make them more comfortable, that is an option there. So we've got the breakdown here, general public shelter in the top, special needs, of course, that's, in addition to those normal items, bringing those medical devices, bringing, of course, medications. This will be sent out and it's available in our guide and in that QR code there on the left side of the screen.
And I included this slide. I know it's a lot because I mean, I don't even know if I have all of those items, but I wanted to include this because I really wanted to be realistic. Some people with the evacuation from the homeless shelters literally are getting on there with nothing except for the clothes they're wearing. So in most instances, people have at least a change of clothes, medication, for their pets and some of those other items, just to kind of be aware. And like we said, Pinellas Hope was able to just pivot some of their resources based off of how they saw the shelter and with the really understanding that the shelter is literally sleeping on the floor. So allowing people to bring their blankets if those are shelter property, or as Pinellas Hope does, they support by bringing out mats for the residents to use while they're in shelter. So I know it's a lot, and there's a link. The QR code sends you to the hurricane guide. Just some things to kind of think about as maybe you have go bags or some resources like that for your residents. So thank you.
Thanks, Dominique. Next slide. I believe this is my last slide here before I pass it over to Jessica, but just some county resources. The hurricane guide is out. There's a QR code right there. That's for the 2025 hurricane season. It's got some insights from the last storm and some changes, but very similar to last year. Just as a reminder, we've got our Ready Pinellas app that you can download, which helps you know your risks, helps you make a plan. You can sign up for Alert Pinellas through that app. So it's a great resource as well. So you've got another QR code over there. So we've got plenty of resources for hurricane prep. So please take advantage of them. All right, I'm going to pass it over to you, Jessica.
Great. So obviously a lot of this will be review for many of you. We've met with you all, and thank you for letting us come and learn more about the work that you do. That helps us be able to plan on our end better and understand just the needs that you guys may identify and how you operate. So again, just to drive it home, know your risk, of course, assess your vulnerabilities, make that plan, and then stay informed. So next slide. Knowing your risks. And I know when we met, we discussed a lot of the risks and really some of the vulnerabilities that you all identified from our events from last year. But of course, we really want to drive home understanding what storm surge is and knowing what surge zone you live in. Hopefully, you all should be well aware of where that is located. But if you are not, or if you're new to this space, you can use our links right there, or call our office and we can run those addresses for you. This is a great tool also in that you can put really any address in the county in. So if you've got neighbors or your family members, or even just businesses that you frequent and you're curious about where they reside in the county, we encourage you to take a look at that. And then also, we really drive home evacuation is based on surge. And while that is, surge is one of the most deadly factors of tropical weather, it's certainly not the only factor. Of course, high winds, we saw winds up to 120 miles per hour last season. That's even with the storm remaining 100 miles off of our coast. Another unprecedented factor that we saw last year across the state was one of the highest tornado outbreak for watches and warnings that we've seen really in a long time. And so You may recall that some of our partners on the East Coast had some pretty significant tornadoes that resulted in a large loss of life. So we certainly want to make sure we remain vigilant for that. The other thing that we saw in Pinellas County, specifically for Hurricane Milton, was high inland flooding. And so while you may not be in that surge evacuation zone, you certainly still are under risk for inland flooding. We had up to 20 inches in some of our inland communities, specifically in Clearwater, where we had to do some apartment rescues in the middle of the storm, just due to those storm drains being flooded and that significant amount of rainfall occurring so quickly. So we really just want to make sure that you guys are, aware of all of the hazards that are out there. I know you all experienced it, and so you're really well versed in what that could look like. Next slide, please. So of course, make a plan, and we go over that with you all when we met in person. But additional factors, and we mentioned this, but I want to make sure that we mention it again, is even if you have a plan, who has access to that plan. Hopefully it's not just one person at your organization, but that you do have it written out and people have access to the plan, to the extra keys, to the facilities, so that they understand, what happens if your one person is unable to get in. What are your staff contingency plans? If you have that staff member that maybe can't make it in because they have damage to their home or their own vehicles, who's going to be responsible for filling that in? And then really, how do you ensure that your agency can continue to operate even if you were to experience significant damage to your infrastructure? What does that look like? Do you have alternate locations? What about if you have partners who are responsible for feeding in your organization and those partners experience significant challenges? How will you accommodate for some of those gaps? So again, just some questions as you're working through your plans, and I know many of you reach out already, but if you get stuck on a question or you're not sure what resource may be available, we're happy, anyone from the emergency management team, to talk you through options that we may know of, resources we may have access to. And I believe even take a look at some of your facilities to make recommendations just based on some of the knowledge and expertise that we have. So please never hesitate to reach out if you get stuck and you need some additional guidance. Next slide, please. And then, of course, stay informed. We talk about this a lot. There are lots of tools out there, lots of social media posts. We really want to encourage you, and this is really part of why we host this call and why we host daily calls, is that making sure that information that you do use to make your critical decisions is from vetted and trusted sources. While there may be a lot of tools out there and different meteorologists you may see on TV, making sure that that information, again, is trusted, vetted, coming from Pinellas County, coming from the National Hurricane Center or the Weather Service, will ensure that you can make those best decisions without, getting caught up into any of the hype. So, of course, sign up for Alert Pinellas. Please download the Ready Pinellas app. The links are right there, and we'll make sure we get those out to you. And then should all else fail, the NOAA weather radio is also available. So make sure that you just have contingency and backup plans for all of your communication sources. And then just two other groups that I just wanted to mention. Some of you may already be familiar. This is the Pinellas and Hillsborough United in Recovery is what our long-term recovery group is entitled, essentially. And this organization, which is getting really close to hiring their executive director, will be focused on unmet needs for survivors of Helene and Milton. And I do believe they also will be looking at some IDIA funding that they have received. They are about to launch their kickoff meeting, as you can see here on the screen, on June 17th. But I would encourage you really twofold. One, if you have resources that may be available for individuals who were impacted from the past hurricane seasons, connect into this organization so that you can better understand how you can connect those citizens with resources. And two, if you do have resources that you would like to contribute, we encourage you to just join into this meeting and be a part of that unmet needs table. Again, many pieces coming together can help citizens recover. And so while not one organization will fully be able to get there, I think the more partners we have at the table really benefits the community as a whole. The next group, if we'll move to the next slide, which has been around for a little while, is the Pinellas County VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. This is an organization that's been meeting really for the past 5 years on a monthly basis. And what this is just partners in the community that have a role in disaster. And I like to say that traditionally the VOAD may be more disaster organization focused. The reality is that all of our social service networks, all of our providers, all of our organizations have a critical role in disaster response and recovery. And so I encourage you, if you think this may not be the group for you, it is. Please look into joining the VOAD. Really, it's just a place where we can network and share those resources further and help collaborate what's available to our community, both during response and recovery as well. Right? Pass it back to Dominique.
Thank you. So I just want to mention too for the VOAD was able to support Pinellas Hope kind of resetting up their facility, redoing a lot of their platforms, and I think maybe even some of the gravel work and things like that. So participating in that is almost like a symbiotic relationship. It can go both ways. And so I, again, want to just kind of encourage participation or just awareness of that community. We are very over on time, and so I apologize for that. But I did I want to make sure we pivot and give space for HLA and COC updates. But I did include 3 trainings, and so I'll just put those in the chat as well. But we click through them quickly. One is just an upcoming hurricane summit. This is really for faith leaders. So if you are a congregation or a community, or you're part of those communities, and you're interested in how to participate in response and what that looks like for you. I think this also could apply to some of our cold night shelters and some of those concerns with things like insurance and donations and legal concerns. All of that can be addressed in that upcoming summit. I've also included a resiliency and renewal workshop. So we are all kind of, had a very full season last year. And so there's a lot of feelings related to disaster. And after the last season, this may be an opportunity for you or people at your agency to kind of get involved in that continued self-care and resiliency to help us move forward into the new season. And personal health and wealth is always really important. And then deaf and hard of hearing training. This is specific for EM, but again, I think it crosses over so well with the space that we do. It is a full 2-day training, but it really is how to engage with those who may be deaf and hard of hearing and some of the common missteps and pitfalls that happens as part of that. So I know I went through those quickly. I've got next slide. We've just linked a lot of our zones. Know Your Zone, Hurricane Guides, Alert Pinellas. I'll put the link in again to request Hurricane Guides and the blue information cards. And then our contact information is on the next slide. I'll also put those in the chat. And again, I apologize, we've gone over, so I'll hand it over to the HLA. And I think we can do questions at the end if everyone has time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dominique. Hi, everyone. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Sherry Holtzbacher. I'm the interim CEO for the Homeless Leadership Alliance, or the HLA. And last year, when I was a newbie here in Pinellas, I found that, and to hurricanes, to be honest with you, I found that these coordination sessions were very helpful, especially since we had such a busy year through Helene and Milton. And look forward to partnering in the future. And so thank you for your continued partnership. And I have another emergency going on right now, so I'm going to hand it on over. Just want to pop in and hand it over to Victoria and Megan, who can walk you through the rest of the slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. And thank you, everybody from the Pinellas County team. I really appreciate all of that great information. Anybody who is looking for some of those links, I have just popped quite a few of them in the chat. And I see that Dominique has also shared the Pinellas County Hurricane Information Resource Request form survey. So you can go ahead and access that in the chat as well. So a few things that we wanted to chat about, and I will run through this kind of quickly. We have shared a few times a CoC hurricane preparedness form. We are asking providers to complete this. I think that we have like 7 of them in right now. So I know that there are definitely a few that could still be completed. This form will really help us ensure that we have contact information. We know about your location or locations, the populations that you're serving, your current and maximum capacities, your preparedness preparedness plans and your needs or concerns. So please go ahead and share that. The link and the QR code are on the screen. I also want to ensure that everybody on this call knows that we are going to be on June 25th hosting a meeting for street outreach providers or for organizations who are interested in participating in direct street outreach prior to storms. This is to really ensure that we are well coordinating our efforts to be out there on the street and ensure that people have the information that they need before a storm. We really saw a little bit of a gap last hurricane season where some people didn't have access to really important information like shelter location because they didn't have access to any written resources. So we want to make sure that we are sharing as much information as widely as possible. So if you or your team are open to participating in that, please register for that meeting. It's going to be on Zoom. It's only going to take an hour. And the registration form is, of course, there on the screen, and we'll send it out after this as well. On to the next slide. We've already talked a little bit about our communication. The county really kind of covered some of this information already. But before, during, and after storms as needed, we will be doing daily calls just like this. We're going to jump on Zoom and we are going to talk about preparing for the storm, what needs there might be, and then we're going to talk about how to recover from the storm if we need to continue those conversations as well. But it's really important that we are all together so that we have the opportunity to really get that important information in the moment and distribute that information from there. Every single day, and as well as these virtual meetings that we'll have before, during, and after storms, we will also be sending out information via email that will include the information that Pinellas County shares to us so that we can disseminate it with providers and with the community. It will also include a bunch of resources. Megan and I pull as much information from as many sources as possible, reliable sources as possible, to ensure that your teams don't have to, so that you can spend a little bit more time reaching out to clients and community members and less time researching. So please be aware of that information as it is coming out, and ensure our email addresses are in your safe contact list. And if there is somebody that you would like to add to this information, add to this email distribution list, please do not hesitate to let us know. You can put that information in the chat. You can send me an email. You can send Megan an email. Just let us know, and we will happily add folks to this email distribution list. It costs us no extra money, no extra time beyond adding them to the list to send this information to additional folks. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you need that. Next slide. Okay, communication with the community. So we are sending information out to providers. We will give providers information to share with the community, but the HLA and the COC are going to also share information directly with the community. So we will be sharing important information like we are with providers that include arrival times, expected arrival times, wind speed, storm surge, hurricane shelter locations, transportation information, important contact information, and things like that. This information is, of course, going to be shared via our website. We will share this information via email with our members, our CoC supporters, clients. We are reaching out and grabbing email addresses from shelter prioritization lists so that we can ensure that this information is being shared with the folks who are unhoused and awaiting shelter and awaiting case management as well. So we are really working on ensuring that this information is widely disseminated to the community, because if folks don't know where shelter is, they cannot access shelter. And if folks don't know how to get to the shelter, once again, they cannot access shelter. So even though we might be sharing a ton of information with the community to say this is where shelter is, if folks don't know that PSTA is going to get them there for free. They might do what we saw last year and what we've seen in years before, which is try to, buckle down in a storage unit, for instance, which I think we all know is far from ideal. So we are going to share this information with the community. We are going to share this information on social media, on our websites, via mass emails, but we're going to ask you to do the same. Please share information via your social media, share information via your contact lists. You don't even have to make new information and new emails. You don't have to reinvent any wheels. You can just share what the COC is sharing. You can rewrite it if you want, but if you are in the heat of the moment and you just need something quick to make sure the community is aware, we are providing that information. Go ahead and share it. And of course, our website for the hurricane information or storm information is there on the screen as well. Next slide. Okay, so we did again notice that there was a bit of a gap in communication when it came to printed information. And this is what's really important. So we've been talking with the COC's Lived Experience Advisory Committee to really better understand how to communicate with our unhoused and unsheltered neighbors during storms. And of course, digital communication is fantastic, but word of mouth, direct contact, and print information are some of the best ways to reach our unhoused neighbors, according to our group of unhoused neighbors trying to give us this advice. So we are asking that providers share information. We will, Megan, can you go to the next slide? I'll show folks this, the form. We are going to send out this flyer. Of course, it'll have more information once that information is available. But here you will see a list of shelters. We will have information about special needs shelters, hurricane or pet-friendly shelters, transportation, important closures, evacuation, all of that on this one form. And as soon as we get the list of open shelter locations, we will update and distribute this form so that your teams can distribute it as well. And this will, of course, make sure that we all have one source of information, that we are all sharing the same information, and hopefully it'll save your teams a little bit of time putting together this information. And we will share this on our websites as well. And then when it comes to post-storm activities, because it's not all about preparing for the storm, when it comes to post-storm activities, we will continue to meet as needed. Last year, we had to host quite a few hurricane recovery meetings because we had quite a lot of recovery to do. I'm going to put it out there that we're not going to have to do this year, but at least once after the storm, we will have a meeting so that we can all get together, so that we can address what's happened, so that we can debrief, so that we can identify needs or gaps, and so that we can determine if we must continue to meet and focus on recovery. So once again, please be on the lookout for that information, and we will share recovery information just like we share preparation information. So please, let us know if you have resources that you need or resources that you want to share as far as recovery is concerned so that we can share that information as well. On that note, if it comes time for hurricane recovery and you have volunteer needs because you are distributing resources and serving meals, let us know about that stuff as well so that we can share that information with the community. On screen, just a few more links, a few email addresses, nothing too fancy, but that is my contact information, Megan's contact information, Sherry's contact information, the COC's weather information webpage, and of course the HLA's webpage. So that's all that I have for everybody in a quick nutshell. Dominique and Jessica, I know that y'all might have gotten some questions. Was there anything that anybody wanted to ask Pinellas County Emergency Management or the HLA? I'm not seeing any questions coming through. All right. Well, with that in mind, I'm just going to once again, oh, Helen, go right ahead.
I'm sorry, I couldn't type it quick enough. And
Go ahead.
Dominique, I think it was Dominique, maybe Jessica, I can't remember. I had a phone call, but I missed the part on the buses. And I know we talked about this last year. And there was a lot of confusion on individuals getting on PSTA buses. Some were turned away because they were told that they couldn't get on the bus for free or the bus wasn't going directly to the shelter. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood that that part.
Oh,
Sure.
yep, absolutely. Go ahead,
Yep,
Jessica.
I can take that. Yep. All PSTA buses should be operating free to shelters. If you encounter someone that the driver is giving them that misinformation, if you could escalate that up to us, because oftentimes it's just that through their network, it doesn't always get down to the drivers on time. But they do operate for free. There's no charge, of course, to get to a shelter or to return. And I just wanted to reiterate also, Dominique mentioned that we may not have full routes available immediately. So just resetting that expectation takes time to get their buses back and fueled up. And then also, as we saw last year, some of our transportation providers also had significant damage to their own infrastructure and vehicles. And so that certainly was another impact that we weren't anticipating. But if you get stuck and that information is kind of circulating around, the quicker you can get it to us, we'll go ahead and knock that out right there in the EOC for you.
I
Helen,
will.
I
For that.
also
So I
wanted
think
to.
we did. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to also add that it did change from a few years ago. So a few years ago, we would have pickup spots that brought kind of those hot spots that would bring them directly to a specific shelter. And so we did move away from that. And so it is any route, all routes become free. So they would still need to know what bus to transfer onto, what bus to get onto to get there. But once that evacuation order is called, those do all become free with the communication, like Jessica said.
And I would just add to that that for cold night shelter, which isn't the exact same as hurricane shelter, but for cold night shelter, the process that we've developed with PSTA is that if the driver says, sorry, this ride is not free because of, some miscommunication that happened, riders have been advised to say, hey, can you call dispatch and just verify that with dispatch real quick? And the driver is actually able to do that from the bus there as well. Thank you for asking, Helen. Any other questions?
Do you know, are we still scheduled to go to Lumen Innovation in the event that we evacuate, or we look at a secondary site?
Yeah. Hi, Smith. It's Dominique. I actually called Haish this morning. We're going to be scheduling a meeting for coordinating your evacuation.
Okay. Sorry, and
Yes.
I called you back. His phone is forwarded to mine because he's out of town for the week.
Yep.
So
I
it's
called you
been a
back and
nightmare
left
all day
another
for me.
voicemail. But yes, we will be scheduling something in the very near future. And so some of the shelters, and just for everyone's information, we do try to typically coordinate to the same shelters every year. And so we just have those discussions on what that looks like. And so that's what Safe Harbor's question is about. And so we'll be working with them to identify their shelter location for the coming year. I'll reach right back out to you after this call too.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. That's exactly why we're here. It's important that we have an opportunity to ask questions. So even if you have a question that's kind of individual, it might be really good for the whole group to hear. So anybody else? Nobody? I expected more folks to have questions given the craziness of last year that we will not be seeing again this year. Just putting it out there into the universe. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do in and out of hurricane season. I know that last year was a lot, and I think that we are all somehow both a little bit nervous about this year, but also maybe a little bit more prepared than we have ever actually been. So I feel good about the season ahead. I hope that you do as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the HLA or to the Pinellas County team. If you have any questions or needs, we are here for you. We want to make sure that everybody is as prepared as possible for this hurricane season, which again started yesterday, if you can believe it. Dominique or Jessica, what day does hurricane season end?
November 30th.
Good job.
Am I right? Did I get it right?
Good job.
I'm gonna add some more letters after my name after the past few years we've had.
All right. So June 1st through November 30th. So be on the lookout for emails as they come. We will update everybody. Please don't hesitate to share the link to Pinellas County's emergency management information, to the COC's weather updates page. And again, reach out if you need anything at all. And I hope you all have a wonderful week.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.